Most coaches and practitioners don't like to admit this, but it's true. Being amazing at what you do is not the same thing as having a business that consistently supports your life. And if you've ever had that moment of, I know that I'm good at this, so why does it still feel so hard to grow? This episode is going to land hard for you. Today, I'm talking with one of my clients, Chris Sandel, whose story is such a grounded example of what actually works when you want steady, sustainable growth and you don't want to chase trends. Chris didn't have to overhaul his personality for Instagram or hang his hopes on going viral. He focused on the fundamentals that most people actually avoid. Things like clarifying his message, understanding exactly who he's speaking to, and showing up consistently in a way that felt aligned with his life and his values. And because of all of that, he doubled his revenue in a year when so many practitioners have been struggling. This episode gets right to the heart of a problem I see all the time. You're excellent at what you do, but the way you're communicating it isn't connecting with the people who really need your help and are ready to pay for it. Through our work together, Chris refined his offer, rebuilt his messaging, and created a simple content system that brings in aligned, high paying clients without burnout or performative marketing. His journey is a clear and honest look about what actually moves the needle and what you can stop overthinking. So, if you've been craving a more sustainable and grounded approach to growing your online business, this conversation is going to give you so much clarity and so much inspiration. So, let's dive in. All right, everyone. I am so excited to have with us on the show today Chris Sandel. Welcome to the Nourish CEO, Chris.
Hey, Laura. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's been a while since we connected again, but I was saying before we hit record that Chris and I have circling each other in so many different parts of the internet as far as like the health space. And then, we have a mutual coach that we've worked with, and then he's worked with me. So I just feel like it's like we could just keep running into each other in general.
Yeah.
But it was really, really a pleasure to work with you. You're somebody who I'm just always really impressed by anyone who this sounds silly, but like actually does what I'm recommending and really puts their full chest into it because it is something where I think it can be really easy to avoid some of the harder stuff. And we'll talk about like, for example, you're getting on Instagram, that probably not being something that was like super like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go be an Instagram creator. But I think you saw it as an
Yeah.
opportunity to get your message out to more people. So anytime I see somebody who's really willing to do what's necessary to get the result that they want, to be able to support their clients, to be able to create something that truly does support their life, like it's honestly a lot more rare than maybe you would expect. So I just wanted to make that note about you because I do think as you guys will hear from what Chris is going to share about what he's been able to accomplish in the last couple of years, I don't want anyone to think that it was like you just like snap your finger and this stuff's happening. It really is something where Chris has been very committed to learning and growing and experimenting. And I really do think that that is what has created the results for you. So just wanted to say that, so you guys have some context coming in. All of that to say, Chris, before we jump into the questions about your journey as a business owner, do you want to just give our audience like a quick elevator pitch as to what you do and, who you work with and who you help in your business?
Sure. Well, thank you to start with for those very kind words. And yes, like I've been doing this for a long time. As you were talking there, I kind of reflecting. I started a business back in 2009. So yeah, this is not a quick thing that I've done in sort of the recent years. It's been going on for a very, very long time. And so what I do, my original training is as a nutritionist, and what I specialize now is with eating disorders and helping people to recover from eating disorders and make full recovery. And that's very much my big selling point is that I truly believe that people can fully recover. And it doesn't matter whether it's been a couple of years or it's multiple decades that people have been living with an eating disorder. I believe that if people do the things that they need to as part of that they can make a full recovery. And that's what I work on with people.
Yeah, well, and I wish that wasn't a unique message, right? It's like
Yeah.
I do think there's a lot of more traditional and heavy air quotes types of eating disorder approaches out there that basically their angle is that this is something you'll always have and you just have to manage it. So I do think that
Yeah.
you being able to say you don't actually have to live with this forever and it could actually be something you fully recover from, that is a unique angle because a lot of people are getting the opposite and it's a
Yeah.
little bit discouraging to say the least if somebody's telling you this is never actually going to get better and the best you can do is just function, right? So
Yes.
I don't know if I know this. How did you actually get into this space? Is there some sort of story or it just kind of like happened to be something that you were good at? Like how did you become expert in eating disorders specifically?
So when I finished my nutrition, I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to work on. At the time, I was doing a lot of sport. I was doing triathlons and marathons and that kind of thing. And lots of people were suggesting going to sports nutrition. And I just, even at that point, I was like, it feels really dry. It's not of an interest to me. And so I just started out seeing different people for lots of different things and had a succession where there were people who were coming to me where they were dieting but didn't really want to be dieting and struggling with their relationship with food and their body, and they were quote unquote doing all the things right and yet it wasn't really working for them. And I just discovered that I liked working with these people. I often say if there'd been someone in my life growing up who was a psychologist, I probably would have become a psychologist, but I just didn't have that. And so I kind of found, oh, I like the messiness of people's lives and how that interplays with nutrition. And so, yeah, I think, started out more seeing with people who were dieting, who didn't want to be dieting, and then it morphed more into disordered eating and then eating disorders and then now sort of long-standing eating disorders. And a part of that evolution was just I started writing more about
Mm.
this. So since I started my business in 2009, I've kept a blog. And so the people who would come and find me were based a lot on what am I writing about. And so as I evolved in terms of the clients I'd see and what I would write about, then my clients started to shift. And so that's how I've ended up where I am now.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like that's even how we got connected in the first place because I started my website in 2011. I was still in school, so I couldn't have a business per se, but the whole like writing a blog and having a podcast thing was, I mean, that was pretty
Yep.
much all you could actually do to get content out as a expert back in like the early teens and all of that. So I laugh because I feel like that is coming back full circle where now everyone's talking about doing long form and blogging and YouTube
Yep.
and podcasting. It's like, oh wow, okay, we've been doing that. I mean, you've been doing it for what, 16 years now since you started in
Yeah.
2009. So it's always nice to see like the stuff that we got into when we first started an online business, which I'm guessing for you, it actually would have been pretty unusual as, being an online business owner because of that timeline. Like, I know when I first started mine and officially started taking clients in 2014, it was kind of like a weird, like, what? You see people virtually? And obviously that's changed a lot in the last decade, but it's really nice that I'm sure you built a lot of skills that have probably come in
Yeah.
handy to run a business because back then you kind of had to know how to do a lot of things, including write and communicate well. So, all of
Yes.
that to say, walk me through the journey that you've been on. I mean, we're going to have to like kind of like fast forward the tape as far as like between 2009 and I forget when we officially connected as like client relationship, but I want to say it was like 2021. Does that sound right? Maybe
I think it
2022?
was 2022.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think because it was like post COVID. It was, yeah, 2022 ish, somewhere around there. And to
Okay.
give the sort of condensed version of this is over from 2009 up until that point, I created a business and it was doing okay, but I just never felt like I could just never get past that hump where I'm like, okay, I feel comfortable in here, or I feel like I know how to get clients in a really dependable way, and so when I was wanting to sign up and start working with you, it was for that reason of like, hey, I've created something decent enough here, but I wanna kind of go further than this. And part of the impetus with that as well was we had a son. I've got an 8-year-old son now. And during it actually happened just before COVID. My wife decided she didn't want to work for the next little couple of years while my son was young, and she used to earn a decent wage, and so I was like, okay, cool. Now that's missing, and I need to try and figure out how to now make that extra money.
Yeah.
And we now home ed, and so she's never returned to work, and so it's now okay. I need to figure out how to sort of earn the equivalent of two people's salaries.
Yeah. Well, as somebody who also started their business before kids, going from all this needs to do is like cover my basic expenses and some fun extras to, okay, now I'm the breadwinner and we have a child. And I'm guessing the
Yeah,
UK is a little different than the United States with, some social support that we don't have, but it's still quite expensive to go from not
yeah,
having kids to having kids. You really can't avoid that. So that kind of
yeah,
puts the pressure on to be like, okay, this isn't just a, hey, I'm good at this and I make money doing it. It's like this needs to actually fund your entire life and your child's life
yeah,
so that everyone can really have the best possible childhood experience, which I know is it goes fast and it's something where people like you and me,
yeah,
we don't wanna be, like, sacrificing our time with our kids just to work more, so that is a really common reason for people to be like, "This isn't, like, a dabbling DIY situation anymore. This is I need to really take this fully seriously as a company and not just, like, I get paid to do some work kinda thing." Okay, so
yes,
when you came back into my world as a business relationship, you were mentioning to me before we hit record that I guess you like happened to see that I was promoting a I don't even know what to call it. I called it a beta because I was like, maybe I'll keep running this. And then I ended up just kind of like bo- bonusing it to clients and that kind of thing. But we had this offer called the Wellness Launch Lab. And basically, it was to primarily launch a group program, but to actually run like an actual formal webinar launch to enroll people into a group. So tell me what was going on at that time that you felt like that would be something that would be useful or worth investing in? Because I know it's like there's a lot of options even back then for where you can learn that kind of
yeah.
stuff, and so what was it that attracted you to that particular opportunity?
So up until that point, I'd mostly just done one-on-one work. And I had dabbled at various points of creating a program, but they were all fairly short-lived, and it never got past the okay, I did my first intake and I took in a few people, and then it just sort of died on the vine, and I just didn't do anything else with it. And so I was at a point where I realized, hey, I just can't keep doing just the one-on-one stuff. I want to do more than just this. And so yeah, I was looking for okay, well, how do I actually and create a program, or how do I bring people in as part of a group? And I we'll get onto this in a little while, but I'd been off Instagram for ages, like, and not just from a business perspective. Like I came off all of social media. And I still am personally. And social media and I don't get on. I just don't want to spend my time there. But for whatever reason, I was back on it, and I saw a post that you'd put out about this thing. I obviously remembered you. We've kind of connected a lot of times over the years. I was like, oh, okay, this looks really good. Sounds interesting. And the way you were marketing it was send me a message in the DMs. And again, this was new to me because I'm not spending my time in the DMs. And so we then just had a messaging back and forth where you were outlining the program, validating if I was a good fit for it. And then I ended up buying that and signing up to that from that. And the thing that I took from that experience was I want to be able to do this like with my clients. Like I want to be able to find the thing that people want, be able to message it in a way that then entices them to then come in to
Mhm.
this. And so that was how I got into it. And that was then from that was how I then created my group program from the stuff that you shared as part of that. It gave me the impetus and the push to be like, okay, you're now doing this. And so I took what you shared, and then that was how I then created the first iteration of the program that I now have, or the group part that I now have.
That's awesome, and I will say it's funny, I feel like I'm well known as being very anti cold DMs for selling, and I think sometimes people mistake that to mean that I don't like selling in the DMs. Like, it's very different.
Yeah.
Cold DM, where you're
Yeah.
like sending a DM to somebody who's, I mean, I've had this happen so many times, I can't even count it, but somebody who literally sends you a message, I'm not following them. They're not following me. I don't even know who they are. And they just like slide in. They're basically trying to sell something to me. I
Yeah.
absolutely detest that approach. I think it's hopefully on a death spiral right now because I think it's a lot of people are wise to it. But that said, inbound DM conversations to sell, which is what you and I went through for you to get into that program, is a great way to sell, especially if you're selling an
Yeah.
offer that doesn't necessarily need a sales call. Because I love sales calls, I think they can be very effective, but it's also like it's offer dependent. You don't always have to be getting on a call with somebody to know if they're a good fit for something, especially if it's kind of more
Yeah.
of a like a specific thing that you're doing. It's a specific outcome. It's not like this big mentorship program or coaching program where it's like a high touch one-on-one type of experience. Not to say that you can't sell that in the DMs, but I do think it's people assume to sell in the DMs, you have to be like really pushy and sleazy and like, aggressive. And I'm like, listen, if somebody wants to just chat it through in the DMs, I'm happy to do that. And, I
Yeah.
hope that my messaging is clear enough that somebody doesn't need like 35 messages back and forth to decide that this is for them. So, yeah, so I'm really glad you mentioned that because I think DMing is a tool. It's not a required tool, but it's not something that has to be like gross or, when done well, it actually can be very supportive for the people that want to work with you. So
Yeah.
that said, so you created your group program. Was this at the time a hybrid offer or was it a full group? Like what was the actual offer that you had created?
No, so it was then like a standalone program, and I think it was for like there was a program part of it, and then there was some live calls, and it was over 10 weeks, and that was how I originally structured it.
Mhm.
And when I did this program with you, I then fairly shortly after joined the MBA as well as I think it's like 2 or 3 months afterwards, and so I started doing that, and I got to this point from this like where I had this group program, I then had my one-on-ones, and they weren't really connected together at all.
Mhm.
And I think initially when I created the group program, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna stop doing the one-on-ones. And then the group program didn't sell to the point where I could stop doing one-on-ones. And I was like, actually, I don't stop doing one-on-ones. And I was just in this place of, okay, I now have these two things that are separate. And what was so helpful with our work together, I mean, there's lots of things, but was you helping me figure out how to put those pieces together so it then became this one cohesive thing that I'm doing with people. And that's
Mhm.
now how I do it. When people sign up, I do one-on-ones. There is a group program where we do group coaching calls, we do group meal support calls, so we eat food together. There's an actual module program that people can go through. There's a community area, and that's everything that is involved in terms of us working
Mhm.
together. And that's
Mhm.
based on me talking through it with you and you helping me figure out, okay, this is how all these things can then sit together.
Yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, this is like after having a second baby. So, after after birthing a baby, your memory kind of gets wiped. So, from what I can
Yeah.
remember, I think the issue you were having was a lot of people were not wanting to do the group. They were like, let me just do one on one instead. And so it was almost like this like you couldn't really get people into the group as easily because they just were like either they didn't necessarily want to invest at that level at all, or if they were willing to invest, they were like, well, why don't I just do the one-on-one if I'm gonna invest, right? Was that the experience that you were having? Was people were kind of like
Part of it,
liking the one-on-one?
I think part of it was like I didn't know how to bring them together, and I didn't know how to then talk about them,
Mhm.
and to be able to explain actually why it is then beneficial that all of these parts are connected together. I was good at selling a one-on-one because I've been doing that for many years,
Mhm.
but it was how do I then talk about this other thing that I'm now bringing in as part of it. And part of that is just I was new to it as well. And so I feel very confident now talking about this. And I feel very confident saying, like, hey, we have a really supportive, lovely community. I'm very good at doing group calls now. I feel really confident in all of those different areas. And I just didn't have that to start with. I think it took me some time to find my feet and be able to, when I have a discovery call with someone, be feeling really confident of like what I've got is a really strong package and I can truly help you.
Mhm.
And that came about from being able to understand how those things go together. But also the other thing was the framework piece that you helped with, so that have you, I mean, have you talked about the framework on the podcast before? What do you do you want me to
Oh.
outline what I'm talking about so people aren't lost?
Yeah, I mean, I probably should talk about it in more of a specific episode, but what Chris is referring to is basically when we work with our clients to help them design an offer, one of the main things we do first is help them come up with a framework for how they help their clients solve the particular problem that they have. So instead of creating an offer that's just like, well, maybe group calls would be nice, or like just throwing random a la carte stuff into this like basket and being like, I hope you want it. It's really being thoughtful about how are you actually constructing your service so that it is actually the fastest, best. I mean, hesitate to say easiest with your niche because it's definitely not an easy road for them to be on.
Yeah.
But, you know, basically creating like the best possible experience for somebody to go from the problem they're in to the result that they want in a way that also suits your lifestyle needs, right? Because obviously, like, yeah, maybe they'd love you to come like live in their house with them and support them, but your lifestyle demands that you are
Yeah.
at home. And so being able to create something that matches your needs as the provider as well as what's going to help them best is really like what goes into that process design. So that's the nutshell version.
Yeah. And so by creating that framework, it helped me in terms of understanding the language that I would then use in terms of explaining this to people. And even now when I have discovery calls, I pull up that framework. I walk through that with people, and the response I always get is like, "Oh my, like you are the first person who's been able to explain this clearly like this. Like I've been wanting to find someone who can do all this," because it is then so able to eloquently explain how I think about eating disorders, how I think about recovery, and why then I'm doing things in the way that we're doing things, why it's structured in the way that it is. And I think it was really putting that together and then having more of those discovery calls that over the next few months allowed me to get to that place of like, okay, I feel very confident being able to talk about this. And I was then doing group calls, like 3 of them a month, and I just got better and better at being able to do them. And look, it's not that I'm the best and I can't learn more. Like I will probably look back on what I'm doing now in a couple of years and think, my God, I can't believe you were doing this. But at this point, I feel that I'm very effective in what I do in those sessions.
Yeah. Well, and you know, there is some level of Dunning-Kruger effect, I'm sure, where a lot of times there is the time that just takes to develop a skill. And then anyone who's
Yeah.
an ethical coach or expert is probably always wanting to get at least a little bit better at what they're doing all the time. So, but there's nothing, you can't really replace the just get in and do it experience because it's like riding a bike, right? Like you can't
Totally.
be like, I'm just going to read this book cover to cover and go to a coaching seminar about how to ride a bike. And then like, now I know how to ride a bike when you've never actually gotten on a bike seat. So, okay. So
Yeah.
you have this hybrid offer. You came up with it's, and now I'm remembering the exact framework you're talking about is a little bit more of a messaging framework for how to position the offer
Yes.
to people. So you have your method and your I mean, some people build a framework for how they actually serve their clients, but we also in the work that I did with Chris, it was also like, how are we positioning this offer so that it connects with what the person's really looking for? Which I think that's the piece a lot of
Yeah.
people tend to miss is that they know why they created it the way that they did. They know the value of the things that they've put in. They know that like, oh, this works really well, but the people that you're selling to really don't know, and they're not usually coming in being like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly why this program is designed this way and I know exactly why I should actually care to invest in this." So being able to message that way I think can really affect a lot of things in your business. Is that something that has affected your public content creation as well?
Everything. Because
Yeah.
I then would just use that as my sort of jumping off point of, okay, I'm gonna create content. Let me go to this, and I also will go to the application forms that people fill out and say, okay, what are they talking about on here? Because that can be useful for me creating content from. But also, okay, this is my framework, and I'm always talking about, okay, being in a low energy state has an impact on eating disorders. Okay, let me create something about this. Or that it's really important to develop tools to be able to deal with uncomfortable thoughts and feelings and sensations that arise. Okay, let me create content about that. So basically, I will go to that framework on a regular basis and think, okay, what are some really specific stuff that I can create content on? Because yeah, I have a podcast. I haven't mentioned this at this point, but yeah, I've got a podcast that created back in 2015, I think it was. And so yes, that now helps me create content for that, and also helps me create content for Instagram. It helps me create content for my emails. Yeah, it helps me for everything.
Yeah, I love that because it's sometimes it can feel like when you're creating content to market your stuff that you're just kind of just like, what do I want to talk about today? Or what's trending? Or what was the question that I got asked from a client recently? And none of that's like necessarily bad, but it doesn't work as well to sell your offer if you haven't done the actual work to figure out how am I positioning this offer so that it's I mean, I hesitate to say no brainer because I'm sure, people do have to consider if this is what they're looking for, but there isn't like
Yeah.
this huge level of confusion around like, well, what am I actually getting and what am I paying for? So if you have that messaging framework to actually connect the dots for people in a really effective way and I don't want to say repetitive way because that sounds maybe negative, but I mean it's a lot easier for you if you can repeat something. You don't have to like reinvent the wheel for every conversation you have. And then from there, it sounds like what you're doing is you're drilling into individual parts of that framework to pull like almost little threads out of it to be like, what could I say that's related to that part? Or what can I talk about that's related to this section?
Yeah.
And I love that because it really is almost like you have your content ecosystem. And I almost imagine this like net, right? Where there's like little like mini topics out that you could talk about. There's probably thousands of things you could talk about. And then they all kind of connect back into the like central part of the web or whatever you want to call it, where you have your core belief shifts, you have your core perspectives that are what's required for your vital paying client to see your offer as the solution that they want to invest in. And so if you can kind of like
Yeah.
work all of your content around connecting those dots for people. And it's like, I'm using a lot of analogies right now, but like little breadcrumbs, right? It's like they kind of come in and they like follow the breadcrumbs and then they get to the core of what you do. And it's like the light bulbs go off in their head and they're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I need. Then selling probably is like substantially easier because you're not trying to do all this heavy lifting of getting them to actually understand why they would spend the money that they would spend to work with you.
Yes,
I love
definitely.
that.
And I think one of the things that's then been helpful with that has been getting back on Instagram. So
Mhm.
I it would have been, when would it have been I came off Instagram? Probably around 2020, 2021, somewhere around there. I came off Instagram. I'd already come off of Facebook, and I had 2 to 3 years, I would say, where I wasn't on any of those from a business standpoint, and longer from a personal standpoint. But at some point there was a realization, and it was while working with you, of like, maybe I'm missing something here. This could be useful. And from previously, before I come off of my Instagram, I didn't close it down completely. I just didn't post for many years, so I didn't lose what I'd initially created. And I think I had somewhere around 4,000, 4,500, somewhere around that when I started back using it again. And part of my struggle with Instagram was I could never really figure out what to post or how to post. Because, for example, my podcast, I do 2 hour interviews with people. When I'd write a blog post, it would be like multiple pages. Like I like long form content. And I had this mistaken belief of like, I don't know how to do short, punchy things that work well on Instagram. I'm not one for dancing and doing a lot of that kind of stuff. And so I never really found how to do Instagram. And so I came back and I was like, I'm gonna figure this out. And I tried a couple of different things. I was using an AI thing where I put in my whole podcast into it, and then it would pull out short clips from it and say, okay, we think this is the one that would be most viral, or whatever it would be. And so I did some of that for a little while, and maybe it was just because I was new to using Instagram again. Maybe I get 2 likes or 5 likes or one comment or whatever. So I didn't really get that much traction with it. And then I started doing carousels, and the carousels with the text, where it'd be the 10 carousels or 8 carousels or however one, and where it was like a little mini blog post. And I think I'd seen it originally for the holistic psychologist, whatever people may think about her. She does very well on
She's very good
Instagram.
at social media,
Um,
so
She's very good at social media. And for a while, I think she does a lot more to video content now, but her whole feed was just this block text on a single color, talking about a very specific thing connected to psychology, where it would be if you've got this, noticing this pattern in your partner's behavior, maybe it's linked to this, and it would just give this explanation about something. But it was done in this style where I thought I could probably do something similar to this, where I just take not a whole blog post, but a snippet of an idea, and I explain it really well, and I can then start promoting in that way. And so that was what I started doing, and really then committed to, okay, I'm going to do this properly, where 5 days a week, 7 days a week, I'm going to put stuff out. And it just then became, I carved out time in my week, the same way as I do with the podcast, of like, this is what I'm going to spend some time on it. And my putting out blog posts had sort of fallen by the wayside. And so I was like, okay, this can be my new putting out blog posts. And so
Mhm.
I'll put my energy into this. And it was really interesting that it slowly would grow a little more, and I get a little more feedback and a little more comments. And I should say I created a free mini course that is my, what's it called, where people sign up for something. There's a lead
Lead
magnet.
magnet, yeah.
I think it's a lead magnet. Yeah. So I'd had that for a while, and so I started using that as then what I would promote. So I'd have the first 8 slides be about a whatever it is, and then the last 2 slides were, hey, and you can get this thing by putting Mini in the chat and using ManyChat to help with that.
Mhm.
And so just very consistent with doing that. And something happened it was about February time, where it just started to go exponential, and just getting a lot more traction, a lot more comments, a lot more views. And then probably around August time this year, it then just kind of went up another level. And so I think by now, so we're nearly 18 months since I got back on Instagram, and I've gone from around 4.5K to just hit over 9K today. And yeah, adding a lot of people in these last handful of months. But I'm getting like 2.3 million views a month in terms of my posts. And most weeks I'll have something that hits 100,000 views.
And this is all
And
carousels.
those aren't just big fun, and they're just all carousels. Yeah,
Mhm.
I just do the same fonts, the same colors, the same everything every single time.
Mhm.
And I write the posts, I give it to my VA, she does it in Canva, and then she sends it back. I'm like, yep, just put it up.
Post it.
And the numbers, they're not just vanity numbers. Like those posts, then people then responding to say, hey, I want to do the mini course,
Mhm.
or I want to sign up to find out more details about working with you. And so over this year, and again, it's mostly in the last probably 6 months, I've added another 1,000 people to my mailing list through doing this. And so yeah, it works really well. And so now Instagram has gone from something I despised and didn't do anything with, to being, if not my number one way of getting clients, like
Wow.
my second way of getting clients.
Yeah. Wow, that's a big shift, and I want you guys to hear that Chris is saying this isn't something that he posted 5 times and blew up. He didn't go viral. It wasn't like, I mean, maybe you are now, but I don't think it was within the first few months that you were just randomly getting millions of views on your stuff. And so this kind of goes back to what I said before about you being willing to do the work, because there was probably a lot of groundwork and a lot of like, I'd put posts out to crickets for 6 months before you started actually seeing the traction. And so, do you have any advice for anyone who's like, how do I stick with content creation on a platform that I'm maybe not in love with, like, Instagram? How do you do it when you're not necessarily seeing the results right away. Like, because obviously, I mean, I do think sometimes people are just putting out ineffective stuff and it's never gonna necessarily be successful. But for the person who's got the
Yeah.
frameworks and the understanding of how to do this effectively and is in that like sowing the seeds part of their journey, what kept you going when it was quieter and maybe you weren't getting that traction from the first return to Instagram?
I th I mean, it's a really good question. I think but there was just a trust. I was just like, I will figure out I'll figure this out, and the only way I'm gonna figure it out is keep doing it." And I would also go online and I would see other people who had 100K followings, and I would look at their content and I was like, "This isn't very good content." And you've amassed quite a following. Like, like, there was a belief of, like, I know what I'm talking about, and I know that if I can figure out how to write in the right way for this platform, I will be able to also get it sort of doing what I want it to be helping me with. And so yeah,
Mhm.
I think there was a little bit of blind faith. I know it was also like I'd written blog posts for years and years and years and years. And so there was a part of me is like I already know how to flex this muscle of just make it part of your regular routine of doing it. And there was enough each month, there'd be enough where I'd like, okay, now we're getting 7 people and now we're getting 14. And oh, that one actually did quite well. There's like 30 hearts on that one. And so, okay, what is it about that piece? And I'm really glad that I stuck with it because it's now become so integral to what I do. Where another thing that you really helped me with was getting okay with asking people to work with me and to sharing my offer. And so previously, I would post and mention it on my podcast and have intakes a couple of times a year. And I'd maybe have 5 or 6 weeks where I take people on, and then I'd have another 5 or 6 weeks, and maybe I do that 2 times a year or 3 times a year. And when I reflected on it, it wasn't because it was fundamentally good for business. It was more because maybe it feels a little awkward to be constantly pestering people about, do you want to work with me? Or constantly mentioning on my podcast. People don't want to hear this all the time. And I really got past that. And you helped me to realize, no, if you do this in the right way, you can ask people all the time about
Mhm.
this. And
Mhm.
so now what I do is I love Instagram for the fact that I can test things out. And because I get to post every day, yeah, there'll be stuff that doesn't land. And then there'll be stuff that, oh, wow, that really blew up. And so now my emailing schedule is I email my list 3 times a week. And so once is to let them know about the podcast that I put out for that week. And then the other two, I just take my best performing Instagram posts and rejig them for email. And if those posts when they're on Instagram say, hey, this is like the final bits are, and this is how you can sign up to my mini course. I then just change it and say, and this is what I work on when working with people. And you can, if you want to sign up to work with me or you want to find out more details, put support in the reply, and then we kind of go from there. And so I went from emailing my list once a week, and it would really be telling them, hey, I've got a podcast, and then a few times a year saying, and by the way, I'm taking on clients, to now asking this 3 times a week. And I don't feel bad about it at all, because even if people don't want to take that action, the content that I'm providing in terms of what gets up to that point, because it's always an email and it's just then right at the end saying, hey, if you want help with this, reply with support. And so
Mhm.
they're learning about eating disorders, they're learning about recovery, they're getting all of this great content. And then if they want to take it further, they can take it further.
Yeah, I love that because I think there's a lot of business gurus, whatever we want to call them, that teach a very hard selling strategy where it's like you're just kind of like beating people over the head with just sales content and there's no value in what like they almost have this there's this new way of doing it that I see all the time and it actually drives me crazy where it's like they act like they're going to give you value and then it's like you have to opt in or something to even get the thing, or you have to respond
Yeah.
to even like find out what's going to be valuable about this. So I really love that you are providing actual value in what you're sharing. And that naturally tees up like, if you want more, I can work with you. And it doesn't have to be this like hard pitch thing where you just feel like you're, like you said,
Yep.
pestering people. And I do think being confident in your offer and knowing how much you can impact somebody's life is part of that as well, because you start to realize like, hey, this email could literally save somebody's life, because they
Yep.
could like, it could just click for them and they could have an epiphany and they could be like, all right, I need help with this. I'm ready. They come to work with you. And you do work in a condition that is, I think it's like the highest mortality rate of any mental illness, isn't it? Isn't that one, or at least
Yep.
so yeah, so it's like literally
Yep.
every email you send could literally save somebody's life. Like I don't know if you've ever thought thought about it that way, but if you're not putting your offer out there, somebody might have that like, "Oh wow, yes, I this was really helpful," but then there's nowhere for them to go and they don't know, right? They don't know that you're not like trying to be avoidant for working with people. So, I think that is something that
Yes.
I love hearing that that's changed for you, because it this is what I love doing, is helping people who really do have a high value, highly ethical, high integrity service that really is helping people, helping them get out of their heads about, I don't want to be like annoying or pestering or whatever, and really just owning the fact that no, your program's awesome. It changes people's lives. And you don't have to be gross about how you get it in front of people, right? Like you can actually be of service as you're selling at the same time. And I think it's really quite inspirational for myself, for people listening, to reframe their way of approaching things like social media, emails, and not make it this like, oh, I have to like say the right hook and I have to like use the right trending audio and blah, blah, blah. I mean, sure, if you want to do that, that's fine. But to me, it sounds like you're using it as almost like a science experiment to identify the language and the messaging that's going to hit for people the best. And then from there, reinforcing that message, because it's like, oh, that really resonated with people. Let me like get that in front of more people, and it's data for you. It's not like, "Oh, nobody likes my stuff. If they didn't like it," it's like, "Oh, no, maybe that just didn't land, and I'm gonna try a different way of saying this next time."
Yeah. Yeah, and look, I've had posts where it went really well, and I say, "Okay, cool, I'm gonna just duplicate that. I'll change a couple of words and redo it." And I've had that then blow up, and then I've had other ones where it then didn't do anything. I'm like, "Oh, isn't that interesting? I wonder what is different then about that first slide that didn't pull people in the same way or whatever." So yeah, there's a lot of curiosity with this of like, oh, like I don't live and die by this. It's not about my self-worth. It's like that's the beauty of, hey, I could put something out again tomorrow and we'll see what happens with that. And I think also, just coming back to the email piece, my fear was, if I send loads of emails, people are gonna just want to jump off the list, or my open rate's going to go down, all of that. And my open rate has gone up. I think before, at the beginning of the year, I was probably somewhere around 35% for emails, somewhere in that ballpark. And now I've added an extra 1,000-ish people to my list, and it's now between 40 and 50% open
That's
rate.
awesome. Yeah,
And
that's a
so
really good,
and
especially
that's
for
with
3
sending
emails a
3 emails
week.
a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. So what has this done for you as the business owner as far as, like, results are concerned? Because obviously, like, followers are great, subscribers are great, knowing what to post is great. How has this benefited you as the person who's running these experiments and looking for, how do I make this work in the best way for me and my clients?
Yeah. And so, like, one, it's helped me to have a system, and I think that was part of the thing that I wanted. Was I want to understand, when I do this action, it's likely to get this result. And it's not like a perfect one for one, but I do know that, hey, if I'm tending to do more of these things, this is the outcome. And so I have a lot more, I feel a lot more control of things. It's a lot less of just, I'll throw this out and we'll see what happens. So that's being useful. So yes, a lot less stress because of that piece. And over the last year, I've doubled my revenue because of this, which is also a nice thing. And it's not. I also want to say, like, it's not that there then isn't good months and bad months, or better
Mhm.
months and not so good months. Like, it still happens, and there's still, okay, what God, it's been a little bit quiet these last month and a half, or like, I wonder what's going on. And I can then go back and do a bit of a dive into, yeah, you haven't been as consistent with putting out the podcast, or yeah, you were previously doing 7 days a week with Instagram, but okay, life's been busier and it's dropped down to 4. And so I can then really track when my sales go down. It's typically because I've just been putting out less content. It's
Mhm.
not that my message is shifted or anything along those lines. It's just, hey, you've dropped in terms of your content production, and if you get back to doing it, things will improve again.
Yeah. Well, I love that because I think something that can really stress a lot of people out with online business is, or business in general, like entrepreneurship, is just this feeling of like it's almost like a slot machine. Like you're never really sure. I can do the same stuff, and maybe one month is amazing and the next month is not. And not to, like you said, sometimes that can stuff can happen, right? Like we're
Yeah.
speaking on a day where the one of the big software things that runs half the platforms in the world like is malfunctioning. So there's like a bunch of tech tools that are broken. So yeah, stuff like that happens. It is what it is. But I think noticing patterns like that, where you're like, oh, it's actually because I stopped doing the thing that's working. So I just need to do the thing that works. I just feel like
Yeah.
that can create a lot more stability mentally for people in a business because otherwise, if you're like, I have no idea what happened, what did I do? Like, now what do I do to fix it? And then you're stressed and then you're like producing from a state of stress, which that's generally not your best content either.
Yeah.
That is something that then can create this like roller coaster experience. And even if you're making like decent money from a sales perspective, you can never really like calm down or settle into it because you're just like, when's the next shoe going to drop? And I'm going to make like no money next month. So I love that you've created this more of like a systematized approach to running the business so that you're not on this like emotional roller coaster every month of like what did I do differently, or oh my gosh, I didn't have a viral post, that means my business is going to crash and burn. So
Yeah.
and I want to reinforce, you kind of like snuck it in there, we're recording this in 2025. Chris doubled his income in a year that a lot of businesses are struggling. So I
Yeah.
want to just
Oh,
like
I mean, this is hands down my best year in business
that's
ever.
amazing. And so I want to just, we bring these case studies on because I want you guys to just hear from somebody who's, first of all, I don't think you do anything that's like crazy as far as your work schedule. You're not dancing for dollars on social media. You're just very consistent and you're approaching this with a very scientific mindset and you're learning from what you're doing, right? And so the fact that you're not doing anything that's creating burnout. You're not doing anything that's like going against your ethics or your morals or your values. You're not sacrificing your family time. Like you're doing things in a way that supports your life and you're growing in a year where a lot of people are struggling. So I just really want to reinforce that because it's not like, if we were talking in 2021 and it was just the online boom where all of a sudden everyone's online and it's kind of easier to make sales. Chris has doubled his income in a down year for most people. So I think that's even like more impressive because it just goes to show that the foundations matter and deeply understanding your ideal client matters and understanding how to communicate matters. And all of those are things that I think you've been really committed to mastering. Obviously, you've been doing it for a while, but like the intentionality of getting excellent at it has been there. And so I just really love that this is hopefully going to inspire people to, not try to get into this like, what's working now and what's the latest thing, but really being more stable in their approach to business and trusting that things are going to grow as they're continuing to refine. So I love that. I'm so excited for you about that because to me, that is like, if you can grow in a down year, in a hard financial year for the average worldwide citizen, like, you can pretty much grow whenever. So, I'm super pumped for you. I would love for people to know where you can like, where they can find you if they wanna listen to your podcast, if they wanna follow you on social media. I don't wanna ruin your algorithm, but it sounds like you're doing fine, and a few extra, like, entrepreneurs following you is not gonna, like, blow it up for you, but I would just love
Yeah.
for people to be able to see what you're doing and be inspired by the simplicity of it and realize they don't have to be, like, a graphic designer, they don't need a new brand shoot, like, they can literally just create simple text-based posts and do very well. So where can people connect with you online to just, like, see what you're doing and be inspired by what they could do for their business?
So my company is called Seven Health. The website is seven-health.com. My Instagram is Seven Health Company. And if you go to my website, it'll have like the podcast and it'll have links to everything. And just in terms of the Instagram piece, the simplicity works really well for me. And I signed up to a program where it was, I can help you with the trending audio, and these are the things that are doing well in terms of the text and everything. And I lasted a month. I was just like, no, I didn't do a single post from it because this just does not feel authentic to me. This is not what my brand is about. And so I just went back to, cool, I'm gonna just put out these carousel posts where I can very eloquently convey a single thought. And yeah, there's nothing there's nothing more to it.
Yeah, nothing trendy, which I think for a lot of people is like would be a breath of fresh air for them. So,
Yeah.
well, Chris, is there anything you want to leave our listeners with before we wrap up?
I'm so grateful that I got to work with you. And yeah, when I think about where I was then and where I am now, like it's 9-day difference. And yeah, and so a huge thank you to you for all your help.
Oh, well, it's been a joy to work with you. And like I said at the beginning, it's a rare trait to be so committed to the process. And I hope that if nothing else, people can adopt that way of being, because I really think a lot of people, unfortunately, they get sold on the whole like quick and easy approach. And I think
Yeah.
it's a disservice. And so, seeing what actually works, which is consistency and, just taking it seriously and not just being like, let me just find what's going to work this month is it's not as fast necessarily, but I think it's a lot more sustainable and a lot more mentally healthy for people to run their business this way. So thank you for being such a great inspiration for our listeners. And thanks to all of you for hanging out with us on the episode today. We'll see you here next week on the Nurse CEO podcast. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
If you're listening to this and realizing that you're ready for more in your business, more income, more alignment, more confidence in the value of your work, then I want to invite you into a deeper level of support. Inside my mentorship, the Nourished Business Accelerator, I help coaches and experts like you create a premium offer that reflects the actual transformation they deliver, and build a clean, sustainable system for enrolling dream clients consistently, all without cold DMs, manipulative tactics, or high-pressure sales calls that make your stomach turn. Everything we do is grounded, ethical, and designed to help you grow with integrity and ease. When you're doing work that runs this deep, you deserve real mentorship from someone who's been through every season of business and can walk you through it step by step. And the truth is, growth feels so much more aligned and so much more powerful when you're surrounded by an intimate group of ambitious, ethical entrepreneurs who are committed to building their businesses the right way, not the hustly, performative way that the online world so often pushes. Most people don't realize how heavy their business feels until they finally experience what it's like to be supported at this high of a level. The NBA is the space where you will stop second-guessing yourself, stop piecing things together alone, and step fully into the leadership and strategy that make your business feel profitable, spacious, and deeply aligned with who you are. So, if you're ready to grow your business in a way that honors your expertise, supports your offline life, and helps you impact more clients without burning yourself out in the process, the NBA is your next step. To learn more or apply now, send me a DM on Instagram with the word NBA to @LauraSchoenfeldRD, or you can check the show notes for the link. I would love to support you as you grow into your next level as an online entrepreneur.